Welcome to the ChicoBag podcast, where we explore how to make positive impact and leave everything better than we found it. I'm your host, Andy Keller, and today I'm joined with Tyler Fox, a passionate advocate for ocean health, clean energy, and community connection. So Tyler is founder of Santa Cruz Waves, a platform that highlights surf culture, environmental stewardship, and local lifestyle. He also serves as the marketing director at Sandbar Solar and Electric, where he works to accelerate the shift to renewable energy in the Santa Cruz region. And so in this episode, we're going to talk about the intersection of surf culture and sustainability and how clean energy solutions are shaping a better future, one wave, one rooftop at a time. Let's dive in. Welcome.
Thank you, Andy. Stoked to be here.
Yes. So Tyler, tell us, like, what inspired you to get into solar?
Well, I think out of necessity, for one, during COVID, my wife and I built a little tiny house on wheels, and it's in a beautiful area of the Santa Cruz Mountains, but we don't really have access to electricity. So we had to get creative and work with, Sandbar, local company here that I'm at now, and they installed solar on the whole roof of the house. So we
Wow.
are completely off grid, very much aware of our electrical usage now, like I scold my wife when she's plugging in the hair dryer, when it's dark out. So, but it's good. We're been fine, really self-sufficient. And, it's pretty neat when you realize that all the energy you're producing and all the things that are operating in your house are coming from the sun.
I think a lot of people are, inspired by having a small footprint, the tiny house movement, van life, living off the grid. It sounds kind of romantic, not paying an electric bill every month. Like, what are some of the struggles or some of the benefits that you're seeing, with your lifestyle?
Yeah. It So some of this, I guess let's start with this. The struggles are we can't have those creature comforts, like we can't have the heater on all night long, set at 70 degrees. We have a little buddy heater in our house that we turn on in the morning when it's, when we can see our breath, so um but the heat element is a big one. Thankfully in our region it doesn't get too hot, so we don't really need to run an air conditioning device. If it does get really warm, we just open all the windows and let the airflow blow through. But also the benefits are that when we have powerful storms, the power goes out, the neighborhood is all dark, we're still cozy and watching Netflix and hanging out with our electricity on. So definitely some pros and cons, but and also the electricity bill, like we had that one installation cost for the solar, the panels and the batteries, and then it's basically runs itself. So that's a pretty nice factor there.
Well, I know that's a huge impact on people's budgets.
Right.
I think in California we pay, maybe 50 cents a kilowatt hour in a lot of cases,
Yeah.
Which really adds up.
Yeah.
$1,000 bills,
Right.
$400, $500 bills are not uncommon
Yeah.
if you're not careful. So,
Right.
I think we're all looking at, not running the heater at 70 all night long. So,
Right. Right.
you're not too far off of, what everyone else is doing.
Yeah.
And then you got the freedom. So it's a small house, right?
Yeah. It's basically a shoebox. It's beautiful though. We custom built it with big open windows, and we've got a great view overlooking a valley. But it is only like 280 square feet, so very small.
That is a shoebox.
That's a shoebox, right? But we built a deck surrounding it and an
Yeah.
overhang. So, thankfully we're real outdoors people. So we have hiking trails right out there. So, you know, uh, we don't want to be inside a house all day long. So
So
it's big enough for my wife and my dog, and as our family grows someday, then we'll maybe build another one, but
Yeah.
they're kind of like Lego blocks, which is kind of cool. Like you could put one next to each other and put a roof in between, and it's pretty neat. Like, what if you start diving into the tiny house world, what's out there and how
Yeah.
creative people are getting.
So you spoke about, it supports your lifestyle, and I know you have a surfing background. So tell us a little bit about your journey as a surfer, and what have you learned from surfing, that anyone can apply, to life. Like, what are the life lessons?
Yeah, I mean, I think surfing in the ocean has been one of my biggest teachers over the years, especially as I've gotten into big wave surfing. So in my early 20s, I competed on the World Qualifying Series, traveled all over the world, Australia, Japan, and kind of um, grinded, because it was like, nonstop, putting the board bags on the rental car, drive from here to there, compete, go back to the airport, and it was definitely a slog. And a lot of times we're competing in 1 to 2 foot little horrible little waves, and I was like, God, this is not something that really is bringing me joy. So I kind of evolved into the bigger surf, and just north of Santa Cruz, there's a wave many people know. It's called Mavericks in Half Moon Bay, and so it's this amazing big wave right in my backyard, and started dabbling in that, going up there, season after season, and eventually I was invited to compete in the competition out there, the Mavericks Invitational. Um, did fairly well, made 2 finals, got fourth place. I think the only goofy footer in a couple of those finals. So yeah, had some success in the big waves, and so I think the lessons that I've learned that the ocean has taught me is really like, most more often than not, things are not going to go your way, and that's the same in the ocean. You can prepare and you can practice, but you may have a set come in and it's going to be the biggest wall of water you've ever seen in front of your face. And what are you going to do about it? Are you going to freak out, or you can't freak out because you'll use up all your oxygen, and put yourself in a much graver danger of drowning. So you have to go into your practice, you have to calm your breath, and just roll with the punches, like Bruce Lee once said, I think it's like, be like water, right? You can't, if you go into a stopped object, you're not going to win. You gotta go around it. You have to be flexible. And I think surfing has really taught me that.
Yeah, man, that's a good point. I know anytime I try to, swim against the current, like, it's
Yeah.
never a
Yeah.
good result, and
Right.
I think that's a good lesson. It's a lot easier to work with the energy and transform it, right? To,
Totally.
instead of oppose it,
Yeah.
and
Right. Yep. Yep.
so, we see that a lot in the world where, it's force against force. And instead of taking the energy and moving with it,
Right.
to achieve the goal that you want,
Right.
so, like, where else does that show up in your life that you can think of? And how does
Yeah.
how does it
Sorry.
relate, to the solar energy
Yep.
industry?
Yeah. I think that, kind of that philosophy and those teachings of going with the flow is has translated into my professional career. And a lot of times you can, um, finding a job nowadays is extremely challenging, and I think for me, how I found myself into solar was, um, I knew the people, I knew the owners with Sandbar Solar, and they did the for one, they did the solar on our tiny house, and they also advertised in my print magazine, Santa Cruz Waves, for a number of years.
Oh,
They were very, very supportive, and so I think, just kind of throwing energy out there, like where you want to be, like, and then just believing that something will come, and sure enough, like I had coffee with the owner here one day, and I'm like, yeah, the print isn't working out, and I kind of don't know what to do, but I really like, sustainability. I like the idea around solar and bring in collecting energy from the sun. It's renewable. And he's like, oh yeah, well, I actually have a position opening up here, and you might just be perfect for it. So it just kind of, the timing of things, it
Yeah.
led to joining the team here. And I think a lot of things in my life, if I'm like visualizing it and going, okay, like something's good's going to happen here, just believe in that. And as corny as it sounds, I swear by it.
Yeah. It's it seems like solar would be right in line with your worldview and your mission as an individual. So
Right.
loving outdoors, you know, being in tune with nature, it makes sense. So a lot of people are getting solar, a lot of people aren't. It seems like traveling from state to state, some states it's really hot, other states it's not. Like, what is the current, I guess, trends in solar, and what do people need to know? Like, people who are thinking about solar, what do they need to think about to make that decision? Because it is a sizable investment.
Totally.
So, yeah. So,
Yeah, that's a great question. I think solar is still fairly new to us all. Solar's been around for a long time, but commercially and kind of mass adoption is in the last 10 years or so, people can really maybe a little longer. But I think if someone's looking into it, really do your research, and I would recommend picking a certified local installer. A lot of these big national companies will make these claims of get in free, like your first, and a lot of times there's a catch to that, right? Like
yeah,
they'll sign you up, and within that, all that fine print, there's going to be like, well, you are, stuck with us. You can't leave your contract. If you move, you still got to pay. Like all these things that um, people don't realize. I've had friends that are like, "Gosh, I'm moving," or "Hey, Tyler, like." Our panels aren't working, we want to swap them out, but I'm like locked into this contract. So
yeah,
I think people should be really careful about those, too good to be true sort of pitches that a lot of these, I won't name names, but a lot of these big solar providers are doing. So there's a lot of local really good installers, have a lot of integrity. um, Look at how long they've been around. Sandbar
yeah.
Solar has been around for over 20 years in our community. We're not going anywhere. And some other companies, similar positions. So, yeah.
So you're because I know there's two ways to do it. Are you, when you say a contract, are you referring to a system where you're effectively leasing the panels and buying energy back versus owning the panels?
Right.
Okay.
Exactly.
So can
Yeah.
you, yeah, break that down a little bit? So there's two options. You can lease your own.
Yeah, you can lease your own, and a lot of times it's almost like you're just, instead of paying PG&E, you're now paying this company,
So you're paying
and
them for energy instead of your local, electric company.
right.
And you're locked
And
in. You have to.
you have to, and you're kind of at the mercy of what they want to now charge. And
Yeah.
so with your own, when you own your panels, you own your batteries, you are much more bringing your energy consumption in house. You are um less reliant on the big corporations
Yeah.
for your energy.
But a lot of times those lease options, you don't have to pay a lot out of pocket.
That's
but you're
right.
locked into a contract. So
Totally.
on the buying side, you got to shell out some cash, right?
Right. And so what we don't have any sort of lease because we're not a bank, we're not a massive company, so we can't do that option. But there are some good credit unions or banks in some of these areas that do solar leases that you can get in and get the money that way if you don't have a lot of cash to put down. But if you do, you pencil it out, after 6, 8 or so years, you're going to be like saving a ton. So when you look at your 20-year savings, and it really is an investment, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're looking to be in a home for a while and you've got a growing family, and if you can make it work, it really pays for itself and then some if you can get in.
So what is the typical break even time, in years,
I mean, I think it varies, and I want to be careful. I'm not promising anything, but I think what I'm seeing is could be right around that 8 to 10 year mark
8 to 10 years. Okay.
to break even. Some of these companies will say, "Oh, break even in 6 years," and we would much rather, sort of estimate on the what is it, the high side, um, not overpromise anything, right? And so, but that's a good general,
Yeah.
what you're looking at.
So if you finance it, that's an option too, right? So
Right.
you could buy it outright, you can lease it, you can also finance it over, how long? Have you seen them go to 20 years or?
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure on the time frames on some of those loans.
Yeah.
Um, but and I will also just preface that I love solar. Solar's on my house, but I do run the marketing over here, so I don't know every little nuance of kind of the nitty gritty of the details there.
Of
But
how it works. Yeah.
yeah,
Well, I have solar on my house, and I got to
uh-huh.
say it's nice because, I don't have electric bill. I get a true up, when I use
Yeah,
more energy than what I'm producing.
right.
But in my plan, I produce energy during the day. It feeds it into the grid. I use, energy at night. I draw off the grid,
Yeah,
and at the end of the year, they true up the difference between what I pull and what I generate, and I pay the difference.
right.
In the ideal scenario is you pay nothing.
Yeah,
So I need to expand,
yeah,
my system.
right.
But ultimately, there's a lot of potential in solar, right? So
Yeah.
is the political climate that's happening right now, is that having an impact on solar markets across the country?
As of now, knock on wood, it hasn't too much. I think on people on both sides of the aisle, there's a lot of investment in solar, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, in a lot of different areas throughout the country. So, for now, I think things are looking promising still. I think the technology is just advancing all the time. Panels are becoming more and more efficient. You can put fewer panels on a home and get more energy, and so or more panels and get more energy. Battery storage is getting better. Um, so I think that I think this technology is here to stay and is only going to evolve and get better.
Yeah. And, and it creates no carbon. So,
Right.
in the production of electricity, obviously, to create the
Right.
panels, there's carbon, but, they typically last for 20 years, right? Or
Yeah.
30 years.
Yeah. 20 years. There's at least 20 years. There's some companies that have 25-year guarantees on their panels. So yeah, these panels will last a long time. And then I've also heard of, there's more and more companies that you can actually recycle them. They're made of glass, right? You can recycle glass, you can recycle aluminum. So that's another positive with that. Now, you're probably going to ask, well, what about the batteries, right? I don't know if you were, but that's I
I'm
don't want to
curious
be
about batteries because
yeah,
ultimately, if you have a battery, then you theoretically could go off the grid and
right.
not pay any electric bill, right?
Oh, totally. Yeah, I mean, people, we're doing we call them like a microgrid project. So, you get more of a battery set up, you have your inverters all dialed in, your panel, you got more panels, and you're just like, okay, I've got, Fort Knox here. I'm can weather anything, any storm, and um but you got to have the cash for that, the money for that.
So I know a lot of, I mean, it seems like as electric cars become more popular, it obviously is synergistic with a home solar system. Um, However, I've heard about the notion of using your car battery as a backup to your house, so like in a power outage.
Uh-huh.
Have you seen that kind of setup yet?
I think it depends on the vehicle. Not all ba- batteries in these EVs are the same. A Rivian may have a much more robust battery system than a little, Chevy Volt, or
Yeah.
is it Bolt or Volt?
Ah,
Anyways,
I forget.
anyway, those small electric cars, yeah, right. But yeah, so I did hear that too. I don't know the details on that, on how long it'd power. Maybe it's just it'll power your refrigerator or something, but I I'm not sure if a car battery is gonna run your whole house. But maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I think the future is bright, right? As far as these kind of innovations, talking about microgrids and, more localized power instead of these huge, transmission lines going from, the power generators to the power, consumers. I think it's interesting. I think, as we look at a low carbon future,
Right.
solar, rooftop solar, especially, where you're producing power and using it in the same place is, I think, got a lot of potential. Like, what do you
I agree.
see as far as the future is concerned? You're highly involved, in the Santa Cruz community. I know, Santa Cruz, California has, a deep appreciation of the people that live there for, our natural world. Santa Cruz is a place where you have the ocean and the mountains coming together, in a beautiful place. So, what do you see as the future, as far as what businesses and individuals can do
Yeah.
to create a better future for all of us?
Yeah, I mean, I love this area. I see a lot of people, businesses, and individuals adopting. I mean, not only solar, but just ways of living more harmoniously, with the planet and the earth. I think that solar is one of the many options you can do. It's just one of the pieces, right? Like, if you can have solar on your home that powers your EV, your car. Maybe it powers you can charge your electric bike. So now you're getting to work on your bike. No carbon there. Um, I think it's just one of the pieces of the puzzle. It's not the end all be all. I mean, if you can generate some wind, like that's another option. Like, people are putting up wind power turbines in places, which is another option. Um, I'm seeing more businesses really embrace solar. Like, right across the street from our offices is a big commercial warehouse, and it has a tons of office buildings of people, of artists, and video production and like manufacturing companies 3D printing surfboards out of there. And so all of these businesses are actually being run by the energy of the sun, which is like super inspiring. So I love to see that. And I hope we continue to see more of that.
I'm on the same page. A future that is powered by the sun. I mean, the whole world's powered by the sun. You look at the plants and nature. That's how it
Yeah.
works. So it
Yeah.
makes sense. And it doesn't create carbon. And we're
Right.
looking to create solutions. So thank you for the work you're doing. I think
You're welcome.
it's certainly part of the solution. And keep surfing and you know living and learning from nature. So thank you so much for being on
Yeah.
on the podcast.
My pleasure, and right back at you. We love our Chico bags, and I think what you're doing is saving a lot of those things behind you from finding their way into our oceans. So,
Yes. So here's to some clean oceans.
cheers, Andy.
Cheers.